Hello, I'm Dave Rubenstein, editor-in-chief of SD Times, and we're here at the DevOps Enterprise Summit in beautiful San Francisco. We're here with a couple of guys from Nike. We cleared that up earlier. It is not Nike, it is Nike. It's Scott Baker, Vice President of Product Management, and RonForrester, Vice President of Engineering. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
So I know you had a presentation earlier, and one of the themes, I guess, was the fact that there is no finish line, which seems appropriate for a Nike presentation. But I guess the point there being that people wonder, okay, in doing iterative development, things like that, when is it done? And I guess your point is that it really is never done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the themes we talked about is consumer expectations continue to change in the world in terms of the way technology is driving change, what their expectations of service, of what they're capable of doing with technology is changing. Mm-hmm. So we have to stay in tune with that. We have to stay as much up with it as well as predict it and be ahead of it. And mm-hmm. So therefore you're never done because that process never stops.
Right, right. So Ron, it would seem to me that the culture, a lot of people talk about the hardest thing to adapt with DevOps is culture. Organizations don't like to change, they're rigid. It almost seems though that Nike of any company would be more in tune with iterative processes and hitting goals and meeting deadlines. It's kind of part of the whole sports theme. I know you're an apparel company, not a sports organization, but it would seem, was culture a problem when you started to institute these types of processes?
I wouldn't say it was a big problem. I think you're right that the Nike as a company has a very collegiate, mm-hmm. Sport sort of center to it. Right. We're very competitive internally as well as externally, mm-hmm. but it's competitive in the sense of a team, right? And I think that's that team culture that helps sort of these transformations go a little bit more smoothly than it might go to other companies. Mm-hmm. There are always pockets of I won't call it resistance, but just people. It's hard to adapt. It's hard to change sometimes. You get really good at something and right. you want to continue to be good in that way. And to change that is difficult, right? But mm-hmm. I think having the team support behind you and each individual and knowing that you're part of a team that's right. going through that transformation mm-hmm. makes it a lot easier and mm-hmm. it's a really powerful construct.
Yeah. No, I hear from people who are starting on the DevOps journey is that a big inhibitor right off the bat is a fear of kind of things work. They may not be optimal, but they work. And there's a fear of actually doing damage by, transforming to a different way of doing things. So was that an issue at all when you were trying to implement?
Sure, I think there were questions. I think which is why we took an approach of take an area of the business, take an area of the technology, and prove the model out. We right. pulled the teams together. We had them focus on a business problem. We had them focus on that way of working. Right. And we had the support of the organization to do that. Right. And then it was through the execution and showing then not just the cultural results, but showing the business results that came from that. Right. Once people see that success, then the ability for people to say, okay, how do you do this more and, right. and in more areas? And then how do you do that faster? And then how do you take it around the world? So I think right. that was where the journey we've been on over the last kind of 2 years together, proving that model out. And we're now kind of expanding and scaling that into other areas as well.
Right. Interesting. So you would say that you work primarily on the customer-facing side of things. So yes. What types of projects are you working on?
So the main area for us is Nike.com.
Okay.
And Nike.com for us has a pretty broad reaching definition because the technology and services we're using are also being leveraged by some of our apps, mm-hmm. the Nike app and then our sneakers app, mm-hmm. leveraging the same transactional services, really our commerce stack right. of services from a technology standpoint, and then those mm-hmm. consumer-facing experiences, whether they be desktop, mobile web, or native apps.
Right. Interesting. So, good. So, what else could you tell us about your presentation that you just, I guess, came out of moments ago?
Yeah, I think,
what were some of the other points that you were trying to make?
I think the key points from my perspective, and Scott and I talked about this a lot beforehand, are really that partnership between product and engineering, mm-hmm. as opposed to, there needs to be natural tension there. Product is pushing for mm-hmm. Delivery and innovative features and staying ahead of the consumer needs, right? And engineering has to add the tension of, okay, we need to do that in a quality way. We need to be able to track that. We need to be able to, innovate technically as well as for the consumer so that we can mm-hmm. provide that consumer. So I think having that partnership and us both knowing that we bring those tensions to the table and that they're healthy, right. It was part of that talk. I think also, you touched on it, just the cultural. For us, I think, mm-hmm. yes, there was a big technical disruption and transformation in how we provide those consumer experiences, mm-hmm. but it was more of like getting the culture to own that as opposed to a set of leaders say, this is what we're going to do, go do that. getting the culture to organically own that and become part of that and be that fabric for that is really what we were trying to highlight in the talk.
Yeah, I think we found, with SD Times, with the reporting that we've done over the years, the bottom-up approach always seems to be more successful than, a higher level of management trying to force tooling and processes down on people.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
that's how it worked at your shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think reiterating that relationship. I mean, again, product development is always the combination of product management, design, engineering.
Right.
So we were always talking. We walked around a lot talking about tuna box. If where's the product manager and the technology lead together? What's their kind of direction, priority? How are they tackling the problem? Because there's always a business side to the problem and a technical side, and so constantly keeping that in mind. And everything we do at Nike, we have a statement of this idea of keeping the consumer at the center. Right. And so you need that check and balance to make sure you're doing the right thing for the consumer. Because sometimes it's easy to get lost just in your function and delivering against that.
Right. So I guess your trip to DevOps started, I guess you had been doing Agile and I guess perhaps maybe some Lean or something like that. And then this has kind of been a continual evolution of the process.
So we did multiple disruptions at once, right? Like big companies like to do sometimes. And there's both a technical platform disruption around the technologies we use, going to cloud native as opposed to data center, et cetera. But part of that, we knew we had to transform the way we work and our processes and how we deconstruct the work that we need to do into pieces that we can deploy quickly and with quality. And so there was a lot of that was hand in hand, and DevOps just became a natural extension and a framework for thinking about really accountability.
Right.
Less about tools and process, but accountability at the individual level of, hey, we're going to own what we produce.
Right. So I assume when you're working for a company that's selling sneakers for $700 a pair, security is probably a major concern. Now, is that baked in along the way? Are you doing what they're calling DevSecOps, where it's shifted left and now security is a prime consideration at the get-go, or how are you approaching that?
Yeah, I mean, security is obviously a top priority. Security, privacy, NEPI is a critical concern to us.
Right.
I'll let Ron talk a little bit details of kind of how we manage that, but this was never an option for what we were doing to, ever put that at risk. So that was always front and center.
Yeah, excellent. I think Scott highlighted it, but it's important to note that we're a global company, and privacy and security are different. Different consumers expect different manifestations of that, but I think Nike tries to bring the best level of privacy and security regardless of the local statutes and whatnot. And I think as far as how we bring that to life is really we have teams whose purpose is to audit and take care of our security concerns. We train our engineers internally around security and privacy, and and our product owners are well aware of all of those concerns and constraints, and they bring those to our backlog and make sure that we're constantly have that at the front. So for a brand like Nike, obviously we're extremely passionate and empowered to bring that security and privacy to bear for our consumer.
Fantastic. All right, I know you guys have a flight to catch. So Ron, thank you so much for your time. Okay, Scott, thank you. And until next time, Dave Rubenstein, so long.
Clear.
All right. Thanks.